Hello again, John Denver fans. We have reached episode number 8 in our series that reviews John Denver's albums in chronological order. We still have a long way to go. We have arrived at the year 1977. You will remember that John's Greatest Hits album came out in 1973. We talked about it back in episode 3. And it has come up in conversation again a few times since, too. Well, in March of 1977, we got John Denver's Greatest Hits Volume 2, yay! With 12 selections on it. Here we have Annie's Song, Farewell Andromeda, Welcome to My Morning, Fly Away, Like a Sad Song, Looking for Space, Thank God I'm a Country Boy, Grandma's Feather Bed, Calypso, I'm Sorry, My Sweet Lady, Back Home Again, and This Old Guitar. Now, John wrote all but 2 of them. Thank God I'm a Country Boy was written by John Martin Summers, of course, and Grandma's Feather Bed was written by Jim Connors. This lineup represents the most popular songs from several previous albums. 5 of these songs appeared on Back Home Again, 4 had appeared on Windsong, but actually a total of 6 of these songs were included on the live album An Evening with John Denver. So I think you could say that this album was still riding the wave of this one 2 years later. Now, when the live album came out in 1975, Thank God I'm a Country Boy was released as a single. It spent 15 weeks on the charts and was the #1 hit in the country for a week. It was on the radio all the time. If you were alive back then, you remember it. My Sweet Lady was the flip side of that 45. When Greatest Hits #2 came out in 1977, My Sweet Lady was released as a single. It spent 3 weeks on the charts, and Like a Sad Song was on the B-side. Now, for the recordings on here, were they taken directly from the previous albums and just smacked onto this one? No, not all of them. John took this opportunity, as he had done before, with changing a few things in a few of them. I noticed the changes in 3 songs the most. Welcome to My Morning has more guitar in it and less of the chorus singing in the background. My Sweet Lady has slightly different instrumentation, especially with the addition of a string orchestra. And This Old Guitar is also slightly different with more strings added. You purists out there may want to go back and forth between the older recordings and the ones on here. Those are the 3 upgrades that I noticed. As for the physical album itself, it's got 2 nice pictures of John on it. The liner has all of the lyrics printed on it, Be Still My Heart. Although, of course, by now, most fans would have already known these words by heart, you know? Now, when this album was released in CD form 6 years later, in 1983, it was given a different cover. Yeah. In this one, John is standing in front of a group of aspen trees. Or is he? Was he photoshopped into that fall mountain landscape? You look more closely at the photo and you may agree. His tie is askew, presumably blowing in the wind, but his hair is perfect. Anyway, it has, a Rocky Mountain scene on the front, a little mountain on the back, and liner notes. And the liner note, open the CD, the liner notes also have all of the lyrics inside. So, these 2 albums are exactly alike. Do not be fooled just by the cover, okay? And just by the format. And by the way, as I record this video, you can also buy this one on eBay, on vinyl, on cassette, and even, wait for it, 8-track tape. Your choice. Go search. Anyway, these albums are identical. However, when John Denver's Greatest Hits Volume 2 was released internationally in 1982, 5 years after this one, it had a different cover on it. And instead of the song Welcome to My Morning as the second cut on the first side, this one includes Perhaps Love, the duet that John recorded with Spanish opera singer Placido Domingo. Perhaps Love first appeared on, let me find it, this Placido Domingo album in November of 1981, and of course I bought it back then. And it showed up on John's album Seasons of the Heart in the spring of 1982, which we will get to eventually. So the producers evidently thought that the international Greatest Hits volume should have an international related song, don't you think? As well they should, right? And so they took advantage of the timing, really, because this international one came out late enough to include the Placido Domingo duet of Perhaps Love. Both of these albums have Annie's song first. So this one follows it up immediately with Perhaps Love instead of Welcome to My Morning. Ironically and coincidentally, Annie Denver has said in at least one interview that her favorite John Denver song was not Annie's song, but Perhaps Love. So they're back to back on this one. And in John's duet with Placido Domingo, both here and here, Placido sings the first verse, John sings the second. They alternate on the bridge, and then for the last two verses, John sings the melody, Placido adds a descant, operatic descant. They both sing the melody line together on the last line of the last verse. So let's stay with this tangent for a few more minutes, okay? Going to Placido Domingo's album, we have a picture of John and Placido on the back, okay? And then inside, nothing on the vinyl wrapper but words. Very nice. And other pictures, I don't know if you can see that, other pictures of John and Placido. There you go. All right. Also on this album, Placido sings Annie's song while John plays the guitar. So, if you are a collector of everything John Denver related, you may want to add this one to your shelf. Like I said, I bought this album back in the day. I think I listened to it only once before I worked on this video. Probably deserves more play than that. And by the way, when John did Perhaps Love on Seasons of the Heart by himself, he sings it as a solo. This is 1982. He sings it as a solo, and the harmony is him singing along with himself. He also cuts a repeat of the last verse and makes the song shorter on here. So if you indeed want the Denver Domingo duet on vinyl for yourself, you have to go with this one or the International Greatest Hits, Volume 2, which I just bought off eBay from someone in Australia in order to listen to it and to talk about it here. Because, of course, yes, I am still a John Denver collector. Doesn't he look like... Let's look at this international a little bit more. It's got two nice photos of John. Doesn't he look collegiate? He's wearing a sweater. He's wearing cowboy boots, but he's wearing a sweater. He's looking pensive. He's looking pensive. He got jeans and Western boots, but I don't know. He looks sedate. There's no liner notes in this one. Nothing, except the vinyl itself. Oh, but there is one more difference between this international release and the American. John Denver's Greatest Hits #2. And that is that there's a 13th song on this one. There are 12 songs on this one. And this extra song is Some Days Are Diamonds. Again, they took advantage of the timing here because this one came out in the 80s, all right, in the early 1980s. It took advantage of the fact that Some Days Are Diamonds came out before that. And we will reach that eventually. Where do I have that? Here it is. Some Days Are Diamonds, okay? Yeah. So it gets all confusing. This mix and match stuff gets all confusing. But if you've never seen it, there you go. It's the International Greatest Hits Volume 2. So in general, about these albums, it's funny, when I mentioned to Robin, another devoted John Denver fan, that I was working on this video, she told me that back in the day, we're the same age, back in the day, she never bothered getting these greatest hits albums. I mean, she said, why would I? She said, as a purist, I refuse to buy them because I think they watered down the themes of his existing albums. And you know, she's right. I bought all of John's albums, usually as soon as they came out back then. I mean, geez, I even bought this Placido Domingo album back then. And I don't mean to laugh, Placido, but you know, it is a tangent. And I just bought that international one from somebody in Australia. But even back in the day, I never really listened to these two albums very often at all. You know, I'd much rather listen to Rocky Mountain High and do it the whole way through, to witness the logical progressions of these songs, the first side, the second side, culminating with Season Suite. I mean, it's perfect. I would rather listen to Wind Song, got my pile of albums here, Wind Song, and to enjoy the whole vibe of that album from beginning to end, except for that unfortunate choice of 2 shots on the second side. I would rather listen to An Evening with John Denver and pretend that I am in the audience. How much more perfect can that be? The bottom line is that these greatest hits albums are not for fans. They're for casual listeners who want to get, you know, a snippet. They want the best of this person. They don't want to dig any deeper. These are like the musical cliff notes for this performer's work. And if the true fans buy these albums too, well, so much the better for the record companies, huh? Anyway, back to the year of 1977, which is what we're stuck in, sort of, with digressions into the 80s. Back to 77. In November 1977, John released a new album, I Want to Live. Has 13 songs on it. No, 11 songs on it. John wrote 7 of them. It's a relatively easygoing album that has a few highlights. I've never listened to it much. In fact, it probably, again, had been 30 years since I last perched this one on my stereo turntable before I prepared to talk about it here. And this album deserves to be listened to more often than that. So let's look at the packaging first. It's got cool artwork, nice illustration of John on the front cover, a photo of John on the back cover, along with the list of songs. This will be an important thing in a minute. The liner has the identical list of songs, plus production credits, plus a poem by Joe Henry, and another piece of nice artwork on the other side. Both this one and this illustration were done by the same artist. His name was Mark English, obviously skilled in a variety of media. But we get no printed lyrics, and this is a brand new album at the time. We wouldn't have known the words. We wouldn't have known the songs at all. And while both of these song lists here and on the back, both of those song lists are exactly the same, they do not represent the order in which the songs appear on this vinyl. Songs are all mixed up. This list isn't even close to the real order on the vinyl. I wonder what happened. I wonder if this was the original set list and someone with a better feel for the music gave advice like, no, you can't do that. You can't put To the Wild Country right after How Can I Leave You Again, because they're too similar. They use some of the same phrasing, they may even be in the same key. And you can't end the album with I Want to Live because it's the climax of the whole production. You got to bring people back down with something simpler, like druthers. Anyway, this is a conversation I can hear in my head. I don't have insider information. I don't know. Just remember, this order is not what you're going to hear when you put it on the turntable. So, 11 songs. John wrote 7 of them. Do not expect to hear them in the order. Songs by the other people are Bet on the Blues, written by Tom Paxton, which is a nice one. Dearest Esmeralda, written by John's longtime friend, Bill Danoff. Thirsty Boots by Eric Anderson. You may remember his name from the early episodes when I highly recommended that you listen to the Mitchell Trio's version of Eric's song, Violets of Dawn. Have you listened to it yet? Go do it. I'll put the link below. Well, Thirsty Boots by Eric Anderson is another good song. It tends to stay in your head. And then Rippling Waters was written by Jimmy Ibbotson and first recorded by the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band in 1975. These are all very nice songs. The theme here is life and love, over and over and over again. It's a moving and melodic album that starts with John's song, How Can I Leave You Again? The lyrics follow in the same vein as the stories he gave us in Leaving on a Jet Plane, Follow Me, and Goodbye Again. In fact, John even said that How Could I Leave You Again could serve as the 4th part of that accidental trilogy. The song Trade Winds brings on a slow island feel. John was inspired to write it when he and Annie spent some time in the Bahamas, so it's a love song. It Amazes Me is a love song to life. To the Wild Country is obviously a tribute to wilderness and wildness. And about this song, John said, let me find it here. To the Wild Country. Hold on. Where is it? To the Wild Country. It's an expression of the strong feeling I have for wilderness, he said. I consider wilderness an invaluable resource that belongs to all the world, regardless of which country or people or political elements are in control of the geography. The world's survival depends on the sharing and dispersing of those riches in an equitable manner so that all people can benefit from them. Yes, John, always and forever and still. And of course, once again, I'm using the fantastic resource, John Denver, The Complete Lyrics, edited by Milt Oken. All of John's songs are in here in alphabetical order, and if John ever talked about any of them, Milt put his quotes in between. So it's great, it's out of print, difficult to find, invaluable if you do, hold on to it if you have one. Anyway, Singing Skies and Dancing Waters is another song that is catchy to sing along with. Now, let's hear what John said about Singing Skies and Dancing Waters. He said, it started off as a love song not only to Annie, not only to my children and as an expression of my faith in my Father in heaven and my earthly mother, but as a love song for all people. Okay. Where are we? And then we come to the climax of the album, the title song, I Want to Live. Right? It is a powerful song. And John said, it resulted from my involvement with the Hunger Project and more expressly out of my interest in what's going on with hunger in the world. It is the most that you can give us. Having been born into this world, you have the right to live. Human rights are much more than just freedom of speech, freedom of press, and religion. It is the right to breathe clean air. It is the right to drink and fill yourself, to cleanse yourself with clean water. It is a right that is denied millions of people today from before their birth. To me, that is the one obscenity in the world. And this song is a positive expression, a humanistic expression against that obscenity. That's what John said about I Want to Live. And it's a powerful song. He gives it his all. I have to admit that I've never been a fan of this song. I like its message. I agree with its message. It's still relevant to today, John. It's even more relevant to today. He always sang it with high passion. And the thing is, I don't know. The chorus is right at the top of his range at the time. I don't know. It's just like too much. Again, I feel badly saying that about this song. What do you think? Anyway, it hits the high notes, literally, with the last verses and choruses. And then, as I mentioned before, we are brought back down to earth with druthers. If I had my druthers, I'd go fishing. It's quirky, it's silly, and yet it too is about love and life. And it provides a comic, earthy ending for this whole album, I Want to Live, which again came out in November 1977. My favorites on it are How Can I Leave You Again, To the Wild Country, and Eric Anderson's Thirsty Boots. So, we've covered 1977, technically, with just 2 albums today. Greatest Hits Volume 2 and I Want to Live. Except that the Greatest Hits Volume led us to talking about the international volume and, you know, the different covers when it's released in a different format, and 2 1981 albums, one by Placido Domingo, another one by John. Everything is connected. And we'll talk more about these other albums in future episodes. And by the way, another live album, just to add more to the mix here, another live album was recorded in November 1977, John Denver live at the Sydney Opera House. But it was not released until 1999, 2 years after John was gone. So, this one will be waiting in the wings for us as we proceed into the 1990s, but I want to let you know, I mean, that's just nuts. Okay, that happened just before I turned 20, by the way. Since I wasn't not in Australia, I didn't know that at the time. So the concert was recorded. It was later released as Live at the Sydney Opera House in both Australia and in the United States. The American version looks like this. The Australian version looks like this. American version has 3 more songs on it than the Australian one does, just to make a difference again. But, as I said, these CDs did not appear until 1999, after John was gone, so I mention them now because the concert took place in 1977, and I don't want anybody else saying, hey, you covered November 1977 and you didn't cover this concert. There you go. But so we will discuss those later, but now you know what they look like. So a question remains, going back to greatest hits albums. What do you think? If you're a fan, do you still buy the greatest hits albums? You know, or do you stick to the real albums? Real albums, so to speak. Go back to those song origins, the order in which they first appeared, in which they were arranged, which made sense at the time, rather than pulling them like individual strings from an Afghan and trying to weave a new one here. Yeah, up for discussion. Again, as I said, I would rather listen to my favorites. And you already know which one comes first. Thanks for watching. I'm Corinne Smith. Next time we will be headed into the year 1979 and maybe a bit beyond. Thanks for joining me. See you again in a bit.